So let's begin the demonstration. I'm first going to start off with the consent module. And well, here we have our dashboard, but I'm just going to go through the client file. So here we have Johnny's client file. And as you can see, we have the consent tab right at the top here where all the other client tabs are. So I'm just going to click on the consent module right here. And here we would be able to search for any consents that the client has already filled out. So we have all our search parameters like the consent method, reason, the form type. So we have all of those to narrow down our search, but I'm just going to create a new one at the top right here. I'm just going to click new. So here we have the start and end date. And as you can see, it pre-populates to today's date and a year from now. So essentially, we have this done in the consent administration, which I'll go over later on in the demo. So yeah, and I'm just going to pick a program now. So I'm just going to counseling, and I'm just going to pick the method, scope, and reason. So all of these are actually configurable in the consent administration. And I can also add a substitute decision maker as well. So here we have attachments that we can add. I can add a revoked reason. And here we can also add our substitute decision makers and our circle of care. So here we have the consent supplementary form. So these are all pulled from the case data. So if you wanted a new form, a new consent form, it would have to go through the same way as it would creating a new case data form. So here we have the consent form, and it automatically pre-populates the client name and date of birth, which it pulled from the data set. And here Johnny can consent to sharing his information with either a doctor or a CAS worker. I can click both. And all they would need to do is just sign and save, as you can see right here. So I'm just going to hit save. And once we do that, I just want to draw your attention to the little stoplight at the top here. This stoplight turned from red to green, meaning that the consent is up to date. So when I go ahead and search for my consents for Johnny, the status lets me know that the consent is up to date as well. I'm just going to click on this again. If for whatever reason your client wanted to revoke their consent, they would just scroll down to the bottom here, and you could give a revoked reason. And again, this is all configurable. So I'm just going to click other. We can give a revoked date, and we can also give a reason as to why. So I'm just going to save. I'm actually going to make a new consent so that you can see how it would work if the consent was due in a month. So this end date is from a year from now, but I'm just going to make this under a month so we can see what it looks like. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill the rest out. So once I hit save, the little stoplight turns from green to yellow, meaning that a review is required in 30 days. Now, the main worker for this specific program will get a notification on their dashboard letting them know that there's a consent that's due for review in 30 days or however many days it's due in. So this is a really great option for people who might not have tabs on all of their clients and they need to know when they need to review various consent forms. So that's essentially how we can add a consent form to a client's file. But I'm going to go through the global tab here to sort of show you how we can configure some of these elements I talked about previously. So I'm just going to hit consents right here. So as you can see, these are all of the consent forms that have been filled out across the organization. So we have all of the statuses. We have all the information regarding clients who have given consent. So like I said, there's a consent administration portion, and where we can find is this right here at the top. So if I click consent administration, we have all of those pieces I was talking about previously. So we have the consent methods, the scopes, the reasons, the defaults, and the revoked reasons. I'm just going to go into one of them just to show you what it kind of looks like. So here we have all of our consent methods. And if I were to add a new consent method, I would just click on the new button right there at the top right, and I would give it a name. So I'm just going to, I can give it a name in French. I can give a little description as to what it means. I can give a French description as well. And I would just need to hit save. And there we would have a new consent method. The same thing goes for scopes, reasons, and revoked reasons. But for consent defaults, there's a bit of a different platform here. So right at the top, we can see that we can change the header for the consent circle of care. We can add a header for the substitute decision makers. We can add a consent footer. And right here, we have days to expiry. So if you remember when I added a new consent form, it automatically changed the end date to a year from now. This is where we would come to change that. So if you wanted all your consent forms to be expired in a month, then we would do that right here. And this is the days to consent review. So as you can see, we have 30 days here. That is when that's when EMHware will send consent review notices. So at the 30-day mark, the worker will get a notification that there are consents due. So that's where we sort of come to edit and map all of the pieces for the consent module. So for good, I'm just going to move on to the client portal. And I'm going to do so by just going back to our client file. So I'm going to go back to Johnny's client file, and I'm going to click on his client menu and scroll down to find client portal right here. Now, once I go into it, it'll bring me to this page, and Johnny already has a client portal activated. So essentially, we enable it by checking off this checkbox right here. And Johnny chose to have his email as his username. If we didn't already put his email as his username, then we would click this button right here, but since he has an email, it's not giving me access to it. And they would just be able to, sorry, I just got a question. I would just be able to click this and give him a username. So here are the other pieces that we can map for Johnny's client portal as well. So here we can edit account information. I can just click that. Can create appointments. This isn't a feature that we currently have, but we will have soon. That's why I can't click it. We can create notes, can add attachments, and have e-library access. So I can just check any of these off depending on what I want my client to have access to in their portal. So once you hit save, there will be a little welcome message that's sent to the client's email. It will have their username, a temporary password that you would be able to add in the description here, and a link to the client portal. But the message that's sent, the little welcome message that's sent, the language is actually chosen by the organization. So you could use whatever language you want within that message. It's up to you. Okay. And also, let's just say that Johnny had a relative or a social worker that wanted access to his account, that can also be done. So basically, we would make another portal for that individual, and we would give them access to Johnny's account. And the way that that would work is if I go into the client menu again, and I go through Johnny's address book. Okay. So I'm actually going to make a new contact for Johnny. Let's say that his uncle wants access to his client portal. I can create contact name, Uncle Cash. I need to give him permission to disclose Johnny's, I need to give permission to disclose Johnny's information to the uncle. So I have to click that off as well. I can pick the relation. And if I scroll down here, I can give Client Portal access to Johnny's uncle. So I'm just going to click off yes, and we can also give them a start and end date. So I'm not going to do that here, but you always have that option by just selecting the date through the calendar. And we can also give them access to various pieces here too. So whether they can view client information or edit it, whether they can create notes for the client or add attachments. So I'm just going to leave these two unchecked, but this is really dependent on what you want to do with how much access you want to give an individual. So I'm just going to click the enable button right here as well and give Uncle Cash a username and pick a default language. And again, we can map these pieces here as well. So if we want to give him access to edit account information or create notes, add attachments, or have eLibrary access. And here we have the temporary password that I was previously talking about. So once I hit save, this writing will turn from red to black, meaning that this client portal has been activated. Also, if a relative, so for example, if Uncle Cash had someone else in the organization that they wanted access to their client portal, we could also do so just by going through the other individual's address book and adding him on. Since he already has a client portal, that wouldn't take up another token. Each client portal represents one token, so we would just be giving him access to another individual's file or client portal. So now I'm going to go over how we can push information into the client portal. So as you can see at the top here, all of these tabs so consent, appointments, and so on, this information can be pushed into Johnny's client portal. So I'm just going to give an example with appointments. So I'm just going to go to the appointment tab and click new right here. I'm going to fill out the appointment as I usually would. Let's say for next week on the 9th. I'm going to pick the program, the location. I can add attachments. Now here's where we can publish it into the client portal. So all I would need to do is click the box right there. And I can make it accessible on the portal by either Johnny, his mom, or his Uncle Cash. So I'm going to pick Johnny for now. I'm going to pick the method and the activity list. And so here's another feature we have here. So if there was a note that you wanted to, so for example, let's just say that I wanted to remind Johnny to bring his journal. I can do so by just clicking this box here, and I have a little note that I can write for him. So I can say, bring your journal. And this will show up on his client portal. Now, if you have an appointment with them and you don't want them to see the clinical notes or the case notes that you have written for them in the case notes section, all you would need to do is just after the appointment, just uncheck this box and it won't show up for them. So it's quite simple. I'm just going to hit save right there. And that has transferred on to Johnny's client portal. The same thing goes for contacts and case notes, but there's another feature on case data that's a little bit different. So I just want to go into there and show you how that works. So I'm just going to hit new. And here we have, of course, a new case data form. And again, the date pre-populates to today, and we can add an expiry date. But I'm going to pick the program. And as you can see, we have the regular publish in the client portal buttons and whether we want to make it accessible to whoever, Johnny, his mom, or his uncle. But we also have this feature that makes it editable in the client portal. So let's just say that I wanted to give Johnny an assessment that I wanted him to fill out in the comfort of his own home. I can just click this editable in the client portal button. And once I pick the assessment that I want him to do, so I'll just pick the GAD-7, for example, he will be able to fill this out on his end and then send it back. So I'm just going to hit save. This is going to be sent to Johnny's client portal. We can also do this with anyone else on this list too. So I'm just going to create a new case data form. So if I wanted his mom to fill out something for me, I would just be able to, again, pick a new case data form, only make it accessible on the portal by his mom. So Johnny won't get this in his portal. It'll only be his mom in there. So I'm just going to pick the assessment. Okay. And again, once I save, this will be sent to Johnny's mother's client portal. So now that I've shown you what it looks like on the worker side, I'm actually going to go into it on the client side. So this is the link to the client portal. And all we would need to do is just log in, accept the terms of use, and put in our password. And as you can see, we are brought to this dashboard that looks a lot like ours, or the worker side. So this is the appointment that I have scheduled for Johnny right here. And here are all the details for that appointment. So here's the date and time, who it's for. So if this was on, let's just say, a relative of Johnny. So if his mom had a client portal and she has access to both Johnny and his brother's account, for example, she could see who it's for, whether it's for Johnny or his brother. So that's why we have this little for section here. We can see what program it's under, who they're working with, the format, the method, location, activity list, and duration. And if you remember, we added a little note at the end to tell Johnny to bring his journal, and it shows up right at the end here. Okay, so at the top here, if we wanted to access any of the information that we push through through our side, we have all these tabs. So for example, with the forms, we have the GAD7 that I gave Johnny, and this is what it'll look like on his end. And so he would just be able to fill this out because we gave him permission to edit the assessment. And once he hits save, this will update on the worker side in real time. So since the consent, the MHQCY, the OCAN, and the eLibrary are add-ons, I'm not really going to go into that, but we can also push information through these modules as well. So here we would have his client notes, which we don't have any here, or his case notes. Here we have attachments. We can also add attachments. And we also have account information right here. So if Johnny wanted to change his email or his password, he could just do so through the My Account section. And here we have Johnny's contact information, which we pulled from the data set. So this is read only. They don't have access to edit any of their their contact information, because that will also change on the worker's side as well. And here we just have the logout button. But that's essentially what the client portal looks like.